The corporate boardroom felt like a trap, all gleaming mahogany and cold fluorescent lights. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the screen where Claire was presenting their evidence against James. Except she wasn't exposing his crimes. She was exposing theirs. As you can see, Claire's professional tone cut like a knife. Sarah Thompson and Marcus Chen have orchestrated an elaborate deception. Their relationship is fraudulent, designed to manipulate company dynamics and interfere with our hiring processes. James leaned back in his chair, victory written across his face. Elena sat beside him, not meeting her sister's eyes. The board members' expressions ranged from disappointed to furious. Furthermore, Claire continued, pulling up a series of emails. Ms. Thompson has been aware of certain irregular activities within our systems for months. Activities she chose to hide, presumably to protect her family's interests. Sarah's sharp intake of breath drew Marcus's attention. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes blazed with a mixture of fury and fear he'd never seen before. That's not possible, Sarah whispered, but Marcus could hear the tremor of recognition in her voice. You couldn't have access to those. Your private server? Claire smiled. The one where you documented James's initial intrusions into the company's network. Elena was quite helpful in accessing that information. Sisters know all the best passwords, don't they? The betrayal hit in waves. Claire had played them perfectly, gathering their secrets while pretending to be their ally. Elena had supplied the final pieces, turning Sarah's own precautions into weapons against her. If I may, James stood, straightening his tie. I believe this calls for immediate action. Ms. Thompson's position as head of cybersecurity is clearly compromised. Stop. Marcus's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned to look at him, including Sarah, whose expression shifted from devastation to confusion. Mr. Chen, one of the board members began, given your involvement. Sarah discovered James's illegal access attempts 6 months ago, Marcus continued, pulling out his own phone. She documented everything, yes, but not to hide it. He turned to Sarah. You were building a case, weren't you? That's the real reason you never went to the board. You needed enough evidence to prove it wasn't just a vindictive ex-girlfriend making accusations. Sarah's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Marcus, don't. I found her files 3 weeks ago. He forged ahead. That's when our relationship became real. Not because of some fake dating scheme, but because I saw how far she'd go to protect this company. He met James's gaze, even if it meant enduring threats and harassment. You expect us to believe, Claire started, but Marcus was already sending files to the boardroom screen. These are the real server logs, he said quietly. The ones I've been gathering since I realized what was happening. Sarah doesn't know about them. He glanced at her, letting real emotion show. I was trying to protect her too. The room erupted into chaos as the new evidence appeared. In the midst of it, Sarah's hand found his under the table, a touch that felt more genuine than any of their practiced performances. Why? She whispered. Marcus squeezed her hand, knowing they'd have to face the consequences of both their lies and their truths. Because sometimes protecting someone means letting them protect themselves. 3 months later, the Night Owl diner looked exactly the same fluorescent lights, same cracked leather boots, same tired waitress. But everything else had changed. So, Elena said, sliding into the booth across from Sarah and Marcus, how does it feel to be the youngest chief security officer in TechCore's history? Sarah glanced at Marcus, a smile playing at her lips. Feels like I'd earned it, though I could have done without the whole corporate espionage drama. Please, Elena stirred her coffee. You love drama. Remember when you faked a whole relationship just to? Speaking of relationships, Marcus cut in, his hand finding Sarah's under the table. How's the new gambling addiction support group you're running? Elena's expression softened. It's good. Really good. Turns out near disaster with corporate criminals gives you excellent credibility in recovery circles. She paused, studying them. You two aren't faking anymore, are you? The waitress arrived with their usual orders, apple pie, wheat toast, and a new addition, chess pie, Marcus's recent discovery. Sarah waited until they were alone again before answering. We're learning how to be real, she said. It's harder than faking it, actually. No script to follow. Marcus squeezed her hand. Worth it, though. God, you're disgusting, Elena groaned, but her eyes were bright. Dad's still mad you didn't actually get engaged during that retreat, by the way. One crisis at a time, Sarah laughed, then sobered. How is he? After everything with the company? Better. The therapy's helping. Turns out nearly losing everything makes you reevaluate your priorities. Elena checked her phone. Speaking of which, I have a group session to run. Try not to fake any more relationships while I'm gone. After she left, Marcus and Sarah sat in comfortable silence, their hands still linked under the table. Through the window, the Seattle rain fell softly, nothing like the storm that had started their story. I got a message from me today, Marcus said finally. She's moving back to Seattle. Sarah turned to him, understanding the weight of this news. Is she ready? She says she is. She wants to meet you. He smiled. She says anyone who helps her brother find his voice is worth knowing. Speaking of worth knowing, Sarah pulled out a familiar travel chess set. Ready to lose again? You wish, Thompson. He set up the pieces, remembering their first game in the jazz club. You know, we never did go on that double date Claire suggested. No. Sarah captured his knight with a move he should have seen coming. But I hear prison visiting hours are quite romantic. Marcus laughed, then grew serious. Do you ever regret it? The fake relationship that started all this? Sarah studied the board, but her free hand tightened around his. I regret thinking I had to fake something to find something real. She moved her queen. Check. Marcus looked at their intertwined hands, at the chess set that had witnessed their evolution, at the woman who had gone from colleague to fake girlfriend to something genuinely precious. Worth every move, he said, and captured her queen with a move they both knew would change the game. Couples naturally gravitate towards sharing body heat. Eleanor Thompson's voice dripped with suspicion as she watched Marcus and Sarah spring apart on the captain's couch. Funny how you two keep maintaining that professional distance. The mountain retreat's main lodge loomed outside their window, where TechCore's annual team-building week was in full swing. Snow fell in thick flakes, trapping them all together in what felt increasingly like a pressure cooker of secrets. Some of us actually respect workplace boundaries, Sarah shot back, but Marcus caught the tremor in her voice. Elena's arrival had shaken her more than James's threats ever had. Boundaries? Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. Like the boundaries you respected when you told Dad about my gambling debts. The ones that got me cut off. Marcus watched Sarah flinch. This wasn't in their prepared backstory. The real pain between the sisters cut deeper than any fiction they'd created. That's enough. Marcus stepped between them, surprising himself with his authority. Elena, whatever issues you have with Sarah, they're between you two. But right now, we're all here to work. Elena's perfectly manicured hand clutched her wine glass tighter. James was right about you too. Something's off. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Sarah? Dad's asking about the engagement. Apparently, James mentioned you two were getting pretty serious. The door slammed behind her, leaving a silence heavy with implications. Engagement? Marcus whispered, panic rising. Sarah was already on her phone, putting up messages. James is messaging everyone. He's telling them he overheard us discussing rings. She looked up, face pale. Marcus, this is bad. Elena and James are working together. They're trying to force us to either expose our lie or actually get engaged. Marcus finished, running a hand through his hair, making any denial look like cold feet or a lie. A knock at the door made them both jump. Claire slipped in, snow melting on her shoulders. We have another problem. James just convinced the board to move up his background check. They're fast-tracking his appointment to the legal team. Sarah sank onto the couch. How long? 3 days. Once he's officially on the team, he'll have access to everything, including the real records of your father's accounts. Marcus sat beside Sarah, close enough to feel her trembling. Without thinking, he wrapped an arm around her. This time, it wasn't for show. There's more, Claire said softly. The evidence we've been gathering. Someone accessed my encrypted files last night. Elena's keycard was used to enter my office at 3 a.m. Sarah's hand found Marcus's, gripping it tight. So we have 3 days to expose James's illegal activities, deal with my sister's betrayal, and maintain a convincing fake relationship that everyone now expects to end in marriage. Through the window, the snow fell harder, obscuring the large lights. Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand, realizing with a mix of terror and clarity that he didn't want to let go. Maybe, he said carefully, not everything has to be fake. The Seattle rain fell in sheets, transforming the TED-Core Solutions parking lot into a mirror of fractured streetlights and neon signs. Marcus Chen watched from his car, fingers drumming nervously on his steering wheel as Sarah Thompson's confrontation with her ex-boyfriend escalated. Even through the downpour, James Morrison's expensive suit and commanding presence made him look more like he belonged in a courtroom than a tech company's parking lot at 9:45 p.m. "You can't keep showing up like this," Sarah's voice carried through the rain, her usual confidence wavering. Her dark hair, usually perfectly styled, clung to her face as she stood her ground, clutching her laptop bag like a shield. Marcus had stayed late debugging code, a common occurrence for him since his promotion to senior developer 6 months ago. He hadn't expected to witness this scene, hadn't wanted to witness it, but something about Sarah's stance, the slight tremor in her shoulders, reminded him too much of his sister Mee before she'd fled to Toronto to escape her own toxic relationship. "I can show up wherever I want," James shot back, his polished exterior cracking to reveal something darker. "Unless you want the board to learn about your father's creative accounting practices." He stepped closer, his height advantage making Sarah take an involuntary step back. "How do you think that would affect your perfect little career?" Marcus's hand tightened on his door handle. 3 years ago, he'd stayed silent when May needed help. 3 years of therapy later, he still couldn't forgive himself for that silence. Sarah's voice dropped lower, almost lost in the rain. "You wouldn't dare. That would destroy my entire family." "Then stop avoiding my calls." James grabbed her arm, and the laptop bag slipped from her grasp, hitting the wet pavement with a splash. Something in Marcus snapped. Before he could process his actions, he was out of his car, rain soaking through his favorite Star Wars t-shirt. "Hey!" His voice came out stronger than he felt. "Get your hands off my girlfriend." The words hung in the air like static before a lightning strike. Both Sarah and James turned to stare at him, their expressions a mix of shock and confusion. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to walk forward, each step purposeful despite his internal panic. James's grip on Sarah's arm loosened. "Girlfriend?" His laugh was sharp, dangerous. "Since when?" Marcus reached them, gently placing himself between Sarah and James. Up close, he could smell expensive cologne mixed with whiskey on James's breath. 2 months, he said, the lie coming surprisingly easy. "We've been keeping it quiet at work, but I'm done watching you harass her." He felt Sarah's hand slip into his, her fingers intertwining with his own. The warmth of her touch steadied him, even as his mind raced with the realization of what he'd just started. James's eyes narrowed, darting between them. "You're lying." Sarah wouldn't. "Marcus, and I wanted to be professional about it," Sarah cut in, her voice finding its strength again. "But I'm done hiding because of your threats, James. We're together now. It's over between us, for good." The rain continued to fall, but the moments stretched like pulled glass, ready to either strengthen or shatter. Marcus stood his ground, channeling every ounce of confidence he'd learned in therapy, even as his soaked shirt clung uncomfortably to his skin. In his mind, he could hear May's voice from their last conversation. "Sometimes the hardest part isn't standing up, it's knowing when you can't stay silent anymore." The women's restroom at TEDCore wasn't where Marcus expected to receive a covert message, but there it was, a yellow sticky note pressed into Sarah's hand by Claire's assistant. "Parking garage, level B2, 7 p.m. "It's a trap," Marcus insisted, pacing Sarah's office after hours. The city lights twinkled through the window, creating shadows that seemed to dance with his anxiety. "Claire works for James. She's probably gathering evidence to expose us." "Sarah, perched on her desk, studied the note. Then why be so secretive? She could easily report us to HR directly. She looked up, her expression determined. I'm going. Not alone. Marcus stopped pacing. I'll hide nearby. My hero, Sarah teased, but her smile was genuine. The parking garage was eerily quiet at 7 p.m., their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. They found Claire waiting beside her Tesla, looking more like a spy than an HR director in her dark trench coat. I knew he'd come too, Claire said, nodding at Marcus as he emerged from behind a pillar. Good. You're both going to want to hear this. She opened her car door, pulling out a laptop. First, evidence that I'm not working with James. The screen showed emails between James and various TechCore employees, emails he shouldn't have access to. He's been hacking our systems, Claire explained, using stolen credentials to access confidential information. I'm not dating him, I'm investigating him. Sarah's breath caught. For who? Officially? No one. Unofficially? Claire's lips curved. Let's just say some board members have concerns about his application to join the legal team, especially given his unusual interest in our cybersecurity protocols. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. The information he has about Sarah's father, likely obtained illegally, Claire finished, which makes it inadmissible if he tries to use it as leverage, but I need your help to prove it. Why us? Sarah asked, though Marcus suspected she already knew. Because he's obsessed with you, Sarah. He's sloppy when it comes to you, leaves traces, and your new relationship. Claire gestured between them. It's pushing him to make mistakes, unless... Her eyes narrowed. Unless it's not real. The garage fell silent, except for the distant hum of ventilation. Marcus felt Sarah's hand find his, an automatic response now when they felt threatened. We love each other, Sarah said firmly, the practiced line sounding different this time. Whatever you need us to do to stop James, we're in. Claire's smile was triumphant. Perfect. But before we start, Sarah, your sister Elena called HR today. She's joining the company next week as a consultant. Sarah's hand turned ice cold in Marcus's grip. What? Apparently, James recommended her for the position. Claire closed her laptop. Still want to play this game? Marcus looked at Sarah, saw the fear and determination warring in her eyes. Without thinking, he pulled her closer, protective. We're not playing anymore, he said, surprising himself with the truth in those words. We're finishing this. The garage lights flickered, casting strange shadows across Claire's knowing smile. Then let's begin. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the corner booth of the Night Owl, a 24-hour diner across from their office. His wet clothes had started to dry uncomfortably, and the fluorescent lights made the whole situation feel surreal. Sarah sat across from him, her makeup slightly smeared, but her eyes sharp and focused as she stirred her untouched coffee. The promotion to head of cybersecurity, she said without preamble. It's yours if you help me. Marcus nearly choked on his green tea. What? I'm on the selection committee. Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping. James wasn't bluffing about my father's accounting. 5 years ago, he nearly bankrupted our family company trying to cover up some bad investments. James found out when he was handling some legal work for us. She ran a hand through her damp hair. If that gets out, my family loses everything, and I lose any credibility in the industry. The waitress appeared with their orders. Apple pie for Sarah, wheat toast for Marcus. They waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. So your ex is blackmailing you, Marcus said slowly, and your solution is to blackmail me back with a promotion. Sarah's face flushed. I'm offering a mutually beneficial arrangement. James is being considered for TechCore's legal team. If he gets in, I'm done. But a public relationship with you could keep him away, and, she hesitated. You're respected here, Marcus. Known for your integrity. If people think we're together, James can't touch me without risking his own reputation. Marcus studied her face, remembering how she'd gripped his hand in the parking lot. Why me? There are other developers with more seniority. Because you stood up for me without being asked. Her eyes met his, Do you know how rare that is? Most people see trouble and walk the other way. She pulled out her phone, showing him an internal email. The promotion announcement is next week. Help me keep James away, and it's yours. All you have to do is play along for a few months. The smart thing would be to walk away. Marcus knew this. But then Sarah's voice cracked slightly as she added, "Please, I can't fight him alone anymore. Just like me, couldn't fight alone." "No promotion," Marcus said finally. Sarah's face fell, but he continued, "If we do this, it's because it's right, not because of a deal. But I have conditions." Relief flooded Sarah's features, quickly replaced by curiosity. "Name them." "First, no more lies about the promotion. Second, we need a clear exit strategy. And third," he took a deep breath, "you have to tell me everything about James. No surprises. If I'm stepping into this, I need to know exactly what we're up against." Sarah's fingers wrapped around her coffee mug, knuckles white. That's fair. But Marcus," her expression hardened, "once we start this, there's no backing out halfway. James will come after both of us if he suspects we're faking." Marcus thought about his sister, about second chances and redemption. "I understand. Tell me everything." Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but the night felt heavier than ever. The Ted Core parking garage had never felt more appropriate for a confrontation. Sarah paced between the concrete pillars, her heels echoing in the empty space where everything had started 2 months ago. "You knew," she said when Marcus approached. "All this time, you knew I was tracking Jane's activities." "Not all this time." Marcus leaned against his car, exhausted after 4 hours of bored questioning. "I found your server logs when I was setting up the new security protocols, the ones you asked me to rush last month. And you didn't tell me." Her voice cracked. "We were supposed to be in this together, Marcus, even if it was just pretend." "Was it?" He pushed off the car, taking a step toward her. "Because I stopped pretending somewhere between the chess games and the late-night coding sessions, between your terrible coffee and your brilliant security patches." Sarah stopped pacing, her expression vulnerable in the harsh fluorescent lighting. "That's not fair. You can't just." "Elena's here," a cold voice interrupted. They turned to find James emerging from the shadows, Claire beside him. "She's upstairs confessing everything to the board right now. How you manipulated her, used her gambling addiction to force her cooperation." "That's a lie." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "I would never. Just like you'd never fake a relationship." Claire's smile was sharp. "The board's already questioning everything about you, Sarah. One more push and—" "Actually," Elena's voice rang out as she stepped from behind a pillar, phone held high. "I think the board will be more interested in this recording of you two threatening to frame my sister. Again." James's composure cracked. "You little—" "Watch it." Marcus stepped forward, but Elena waved him off. "I don't need protection anymore," she told Sarah, eyes glistening. "That's what therapy and Gamblers Anonymous taught me. And you," she turned to James, "you really shouldn't use someone's addiction history to blackmail them. We tend to recognize manipulation pretty quickly." "You played us," Claire realized, backing away. "No," Elena's voice hardened. "I played you. Because my sister might be overprotective and terrible at expressing emotions, but she never leaked my addiction struggles to our father. James did, after I refused to help him steal company data last year." Sarah's sharp inhale drew Marcus's attention. He watched as years of misunderstanding crumbled between the sisters. "The board has everything now," Elena continued. "The real server logs, your blackmail attempts, the faked evidence against Sarah. It's over." As security officers appeared at the garage entrance, Marcus felt Sarah's hand slip into his. This time, there were no witnesses to perform for, no roles to play. "I stopped pretending too," she whispered, just for him. "Somewhere between you defending me to Elena and building a secret case to protect the company. I didn't know how to be real after faking it for so long." James's angry shouts echoed as security led him and Claire away, but Marcus barely heard them. He was too busy learning what Sarah's smile looked like when it wasn't part of an act, and finding it even more beautiful than before. "Your parents met at a chess tournament." Sarah's incredulous voice carried across the dimly lit jazz club, the Blue Note, where they'd agreed to meet for their relationship homework. 2 weeks into their charade, she'd insisted they learn everything about each other to make their story bulletproof. Marcus moved his queen across the travel chess set he brought, capturing her bishop. Regional championships, 1992. Mom destroyed Dad's favorite opening strategy. He was so impressed, he asked her to coffee. He smiled at the memory. They still play every Sunday. Sarah studied the board, jazz saxophone weaving through the background. Her fingers, usually so confident on a keyboard, hesitated over her pieces. That's actually kind of romantic. My move history is less impressive. Learned last week via YouTube. You're not terrible, Marcus offered, then added with a grin. For a beginner. Watch it, Chen. She finally moved her knight. Check. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Maybe she wasn't just a beginner after all. As he analyzed her move, Sarah pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of him concentrating. What are you doing? Building our digital footprint. James stalks social media. She showed him the photo, him in his blue button-down, brow furrowed, looking surprisingly natural in the club's moody lighting. See? Perfect candid boyfriend moment. Caption. Teaching me his favorite game. He doesn't know I've been practicing. Something twisted in Marcus's chest. You're good at this. Had to be. James. She paused, mask slipping for a moment. He noticed everything. One wrong detail, and he'd spend hours picking apart my explanations. Before Marcus could respond, a familiar voice cut through the jazz. Sarah? Sarah Thompson? They both froze. Claire Davidson, Techcor's new HR director, and James's new girlfriend, was standing at their table, elegant in a black dress that screamed after-work cocktails. I thought that was you. Claire's smile was perfect, practiced. And Marcus Chen, right? From development? Her eyes darted between them, then to the chess set, calculating something. Sarah's hand found Marcus's across the table, squeezing slightly. Claire. Yes. We were just. Date night. Marcus cut in smoothly, turning his hand to interlace his fingers with Sarah's. Though I didn't expect to run into anyone from work here. Oh, I love jazz. Claire's smile didn't waver. James introduced me to this place actually. He used to bring Sarah here all the time. The squeeze on Marcus's hand turned painful. He could feel Sarah's pulse racing through her palm. Different memories now. Sarah managed, her voice steady even as her fingers trembled against his. Marcus is teaching me chess. Turns out I have a knack for it. Claire's eyes lingered on their joined hands. How long did you say you two have been together? 2 months. They answered in unison, the practiced lie falling easily from their lips. Interesting. Claire took out her own phone, snapping a quick picture before either could protest. James will be fascinated to hear that. He was just saying yesterday how much he missed the jazz here. Her smile turned sharp. Maybe we should all come together sometime. Double date. The saxophone hit a blue note as Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, both knowing they'd just stepped into much deeper waters.